Hello everyone, and welcome back to Hexen, where today we'll be playing through Hub 3, Heresiarch Seminary, with the fighter on Titan difficulty getting all kills.
Worship me, and I may yet be merciful. Then again, maybe not.
And I'm deliberately not walking forward, because enemies can shoot through Korax, and they will if I walk too far forward. But moving on. From the start of this hub, just gonna try and kill 2 Chaos Serpents and then jump down and immediately introduce a variety of new things. First of all, there's the Dark Bishops over there, as you can see, throwing various projectiles at me and all the other centaurs in this area. They usually die in 1 or 2 hammers, and as long as you don't get hit by their many projectiles, it's not too bad. There's a closed door here, which is going to open when we kill enough centaurs. There is a new type of centaur called the Slaughter, who has ranged attacks. And there's these tiny mushrooms, which, if you break them, have the same effect as the Cleric's Flechette, and can destroy these centaurs with relative ease. The only difference being with these, you cannot use a Disc of Repulsion to push these clouds back and deal massive damage, unfortunately. However, we can take care of the centaurs this way, and as we kill just a few more in a second, it should open the doors. I think one of the centaurs did go up one of these elevators, and there's 3 elevators in total. The center one lowers repeatedly, but the ones on the side only lower once every 3 times that the center one lowers. So it's not really worth waiting for. There's a couple of flechettes at the 2 sides and also a bunch of Chaos Serpents, and we'll get those when we get those. But for now, we're going to run inside. If we walk far enough forwards, it's going to cause a small earthquake and slowly light up a large amount of torches that then light up the area. And then spawns a whole bunch more Dark Bishops. And I'm just going to run in circles for a second to cause the various Ettins in this room to start infighting with the enemies here. Occasionally an enemy might come back down from the elevator and join the fight as well, like a centaur. But after a while, I'm just going to start focusing on the Dark Bishops and that lone Chaos Serpent sitting on this strange structure. Because it's really only the ranged attackers here that can deal a rather unfortunate amount of damage. While the damage output from a Dark Bishop isn't extremely high, their projectiles on their own don't deal that much damage. Getting hit by multiples can easily destroy you, simply due to the fact of how many they are shooting at you. So be somewhat careful, but other than that, they are rather frail, so they die quite easily. There's plenty of health and mana in this room, so occasionally I will just use a quartz flask when I'm starting to run low, but I'm not worried too much. There is also a couple of Chaos Serpents in the side rooms which may shoot at you at the same time, and that can be probably one of the more dangerous things in this room, honestly. And there is also a few gargoyles here as well, which can occasionally shoot outside, but it's rather rare. Dealing with this Chaos Serpent first, guarding a flight power-up, 2 hammers is always enough, and there's a couple on this side as well, which I'm just going to throw a few more hammers in their direction and call it a day. Now, from this point on, there's a couple things we can do. Over here is a wall with a gem inside it. When we touch it, our character says, which indicates we need a puzzle item to continue in that direction. There is a Dark Bishop shooting at me from a distance. And while going in this direction anyway, might as well talk about this large square. Because it's an interesting square. I'll deal with it when the Dark Bishops are dead, because it can be a dangerous square as well. But now that they're all dealt with, this is a box, and when we walk closer to it, it opens and it spawns 4 things. And it can be good things and it can be bad things, and this time around it was primarily bad things, unfortunately. Now, walking into this is no longer going to open it again unless we wait in this level for 2 minutes and 20 seconds, so it's gonna take a while. And if you are wanting to get items inside it, you can use the torch to get back in here, and then press the use key to get out again. But it won't spawn 4 more things until we wait that amount of time in this level and then walk closer to it again. And the things it can spawn depend effectively on how lucky you are. It rolls 5 20-sided dice, and for the first 4, Depending on what you roll, you get a certain enemy or item, most notably probably the Craters of Might and the Banishment Devices. And then the 5th one it rolls, it actually does nothing with, because it tries to spawn it in an area that doesn't exist. So that one is a bit unfortunate, but if you're lucky you can get pretty good items out of it. And explaining this usually takes long enough that by the time I'm done explaining it, I can get some more stuff from it. But while we wait a little bit longer, I'm going to deal with these 2 doors. There's 2 doors which have a switch which we can pull that lowers the area where the Chaos Serpents at the very start were, but this also allows us to shoot some hammers at these Chaos Serpents on the side here with relative safety. That means we don't have to wait for elevators or flight to be able to kill these enemies. Gonna do the same thing with the enemies on the other side as well. Unfortunately, you do take falling damage jumping from that height, but there's a couple of crystal vials here waiting for us to heal back up again. Getting the discs of repulsion as well, because why not? And they're gonna be useful during this chapter as well, so that's quite nice. But that is the Chaos Serpents dealt with, and we no longer need to worry about this area. Now, to actually progress in the level, we want to go in one of these 2 directions. It's currently blocked off by a couple of pillars. We can fight this lone centaur here if we so desire, but other than that, we can't really do too much. And same goes for this side as well, which is guarded by 2 more pillars. And you can lower those by destroying the stained glass windows here, which are housing a variety of Ettins. I believe with the other classes there are Afrits here instead, but the fighter has to deal with Ettins. Pulled 3 switches and then do the same thing on the other side. But let's see if this lowers again. It did. We get a quartz flask, which is kind of nice. Also some blue mana. Overall, not the most stunning results so far, but we get a couple of tries on that thing, and hopefully we can get something good out of it eventually. But for now, just going to kill the remaining Ettins there. Pull 3 more switches, and then run to the newly opened areas. Over here is just a couple of Ettins which I'd like to deal with first before going to the other side. There's an elevator here which we can take down to another level, but we'll deal with that when we deal with that. But it is one of the 2 levels where we need to go to fill up this wall with other gems as well. So we'll get there soon. But first, gonna run all the way forward and try to cause a little bit of infighting here, and also deal with the various Chaos Serpents on the side as well. And try not to get surrounded by enemies, because there is a couple of Slaughtars, which are the ranged centaurs, waiting for us up top. And they can be rather a nuisance. Also be careful that you don't get a hammer reflected back at you, because it deals just about as much damage to you as it does to them, and quite frankly they have a lot of health and we do not. But just grabbing all of this, and now dealing with the enemies up top there. The main reason we're going here is to pull a switch which is hidden behind some trees over here. And when we pull it, it's going to start spinning around a couple of walls here and here, with some enemies behind it as well. Usually, 2 Chaos Serpents end up blocking these 2 walls, and while these 2 walls are blocked off, these 2 are going to stop spinning as well. So you do actually need to deal with the enemies which are stuck here. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to progress. Fortunately, you can usually kill them with relative ease by just attacking them with a ranged or melee attack. And this time it was no different. I'm just going to pick up everything. Hopefully we can get some damage done to the Chaos Serpents in there, because they are in rather an unfortunate place. But they seem to have disappeared. I hope they just walked into the wall there, and I think they did. So that is nice. And this is a rather important room for all of the different classes, because in this room await a large number of Afrits, which is not the most important part of this room, obviously, because it also holds the last part of the ultimate weapon. And I'm just going to deal with the various Afrits here first before picking that item up. But right here is the 4th part of Quietus, our sword. It uses blue and green mana to attack, and quite a lot of it as well, but it does deal a decent amount of damage. I'll show it off later. Same goes for the Wraith Verge for the Cleric, which is waiting for us here, and the Blood Scourge for the Mage. Now there's a large quantity of pots in this room, and all the tiny ones actually have things inside it, and all the other ones do not, so you can't just focus on the small ones. This particular one has an entire Dark Bishop inside it somehow, which is impressive. And one thing I failed to mention so far, because it's usually a bit unwieldy to use, is you do actually have hotkeys for various items, and I'll just show on screen which hotkey is which. I don't think you can actually rebind them, but if you press the 0 key twice, you'll throw 2 flechettes and easily deal with the Dark Bishop that was looking in the other direction. And it can make life a little bit easier. Like I said, it's a bit unwieldy because pressing 0 on the keyboard, it's just not great, but occasionally it does have its uses, but it does mean I have to let go of either my mouse or my movement, so it's gonna happen whenever, but don't worry too much about it when it does. Now, there's one more area we can go before going to the next, well, before opening up the next level, and that is this side. This is a large hallway. What does this actually do? Oh, I guess this might be a switch for if you somehow ended up on the other side. I might have to actually investigate that, but I've never noticed this switch before. Don't worry about it. Probably just makes these things spin in deathmatch or something. But there is a couple of walls which look like this. These show up a couple times in this hub, and if you use them, it's going to, in this instance, lower a couple of elevators. There is another one on the other side as well, and that's the one I will be using. Simply due to the fact that it means we can get a couple more kills before moving on. And we could probably use a couple quartz flasks here as well, because we're gonna get plenty of them back here, so let's just do that. And this is where I'm going to start using Quietus, our newly acquired, newly built sword, and a large quantity of Chaos Serpents. As you can see, it is quite powerful. It unfortunately lacks the piercing effect that other ultimate weapons have, but on its own, it is still quite strong. I believe it requires the least amount of mana out of all of the 4th weapons for each class. And yeah, all in all, it's pretty good, but it does cost a large quantity of mana to use, and that's really the main reason why you probably won't see me use it that much, especially with the fighter. The other classes get a pretty significant boon from the weapon, but the weapons for the fighter are already so strong that it can make it a difficult choice to actually use it. But from time to time, you'll run into rather difficult rooms and it can be useful. Plus against bosses, it's quite strong as well. Now, the mage gets the Blood Scourge, and the Blood Scourge is kind of interesting. It does have a piercing effect. It also has a homing effect, which works worse than you'd probably like, because the moment it usually hits an enemy, it starts to circle back and then it hits a wall. And when the projectile hits a wall, it does explode and deals a bunch more damage. You'd rather actually try to kill multiple enemies with it. So it's rather difficult to use, but if you can line up enemies or get them close to each other, you can do large amounts of damage with it. The cleric, on the other hand, gets the Wraith Verge. And that's probably the strongest weapon in the game. It shoots a ball that explodes into a bunch of ghosts, and the ghosts look for enemies to try and kill, and then once the enemy is dead, they'll just keep looking. Occasionally they disappear after they hit a wall, occasionally they just go through the wall and attack enemies you haven't even seen before, and all in all, it is incredibly strong. Now, with the Wraith Verge in particular, you do need to be a little careful with centaurs, simply due to the fact that if they are currently blocking and you shoot your Wraith Verge at them while they're blocking, one of two things usually happens. Either the ghost starts circling around the centaur and do nothing, or they go back to you and just destroy you. So it's definitely something you need to be somewhat careful with. But the mage doesn't actually have this problem. I believe the mage's Blood Scourge actually just goes through a blocking centaur. So that does make it quite nice. But even with that downside of the Wraith Verge, it is still so good. And when they're not blocking, they just destroy centaurs easily. Now over here is an icon of the defender. And now that we have grabbed that, I'm gonna go back to this area one more time, because there is a switch we can pull. Eventually it is going to lower some stairs here to reveal a new area, which is guarded by a couple of dark bishops, but overall not anything to really worry about. It can be rather fiddly to kill due to the angle, but it does open up this wall when we enter this room. we can grab this shield, but opening up this wall also opened up the wall on the other side, which has a couple more dark bishops in it as well. But provided you're careful with their projectiles, everything should be okay, and we can start going through this small corridor. Now this is kind of a magic corridor because it takes you to the top of this platform, and geographically that doesn't really work, but don't worry about it. If we pull this switch, we can open that door. But if you're curious how it works, it kind of gives it away when you use the auto map, because if you walk forward here, suddenly you get teleported to the other side of the map. And if you're paying attention to it, you can kind of see the part where you get teleported. But this particular one is probably the most subtle in the game. There's not that many of these instances either, but it's kind of a neat effect all in all. Now, let's go here, since we are close to this level anyway, and go to another swamp. Now our goal in this hub for now is to grab a large quantity of gems and push them into a wall. And to do that we need to visit the 2 areas we have opened up. So first of all, we're just going to kill a couple of centaurs here. I'm trying to lure them to me because there is a couple of slaughters slightly to my right. Also, occasionally the reflection of the centaur can cause infighting if they reflect a hammer into another enemy. It's rather rare because you need to actually miss the one enemy and then reflect it back, but it can happen from time to time, which is cool. But now that those centaurs are dead, we can start focusing on these. There is a couple mushrooms which the auto-aim tends to go for, so I'd like to just blow those up, but they are easily dealt with. And then onwards, a couple more centaurs. Now, the mushrooms you can destroy make a specific sound and look rather peculiar. This is just a regular mushroom, but they do look different from one another, so you can tell which one is which. And now I'm just gonna hammer my way down. There should be another mushroom here which we can hopefully destroy to deal a bunch of damage to the various centaurs here, but I'm struggling unfortunately to actually hit the mushrooms this time around, which is alright. The axe ended up doing so much damage that it really isn't a problem at all. There is a couple slaughters here as well, so be careful of those, but as you may have noticed, the other enemies were blocking their shots quite effectively. And all in all, it was nothing to really worry about. Now, before we move on, I'm just gonna kill the remaining Ettins here and just grab a couple of power-ups here. There is a big wall over here, and there is a bunch of enemies behind it. And as I mentioned in the previous episode, you can use discs of repulsion through walls, and the hotkey for the disc of repulsion is the number 9. So I'm just gonna walk past this wall and press 9 a bunch. And that will usually cause some kind of infighting. And it means that this area becomes a little bit more safe for later. Plus we can easily replenish a lot of these discs of repulsion as well, so that's nice. When we pull this switch, it's going to lower this elevator, which eventually raises again and acts as a crusher for that entire room. So be careful as you progress through this part of the level. You do not want to get crushed by those elevators, but we do want to go to the other side here. Plus there is a bunch of Ettins to kill as well. And the crushers do have a tendency to help out with that, which is lovely. Go over here to the one that has the axe, because it means this is the one that actually opens up a new door. Pull that one to open the door, and down there are a couple of dark bishops currently shooting at us. You can use the crusher again. You can also press the 0 button a couple times, which deals a large quantity of damage provided you hit the front ones, and hopefully the ones in the back took some damage also. But given that I cannot find the 4th one, I'm just going to assume they're all dead. This is going to lower an area we visited previously, so we can go back there in a second and deal with some more puzzle items. And we're just gonna walk on forward, deal with the remaining enemies, get our flechettes back as well, and before you know it, we'll have gone full circle. And I presume that's all the enemies killed in that room right there. So moving on, this has now lowered, and you can once again use the discs of repulsion to hopefully cause a little bit of infighting between these enemies, because having the Chaos Serpent fight other enemies is just a very easy way to deal with them with the axe. Plus the other Ettins weren't really doing anything either. Alternatively, you can just shoot with your sword, but it can be rather tricky to hit the Chaos Serpent through the various items there, so ultimately do what you want. There is plenty of mana in this level, so using it once or twice is no big deal. There is, I believe, 1 or 2 Stalker bosses here. I'm gonna say 2, due to the fact there were 2 of them. And picking up this gem, the Emerald Planet as it's called, is going to open up that wall which I mentioned previously. It also opens up a couple doors, but we'll go through those eventually. But for now, you can see a large quantity of Etten corpses, and all of these died in one hit afterwards, so they all did some damage to each other. There's a percolator over there, and stepping into the room opens up these 2 walls with a bunch of Slaughtars behind it. I think the ones on the right actually ended up infighting with each other, because there was only one coming out. On the left they were not, but that's okay. All in all, it just makes this fight slightly easier, which is nice. Just gonna jump up here to get some of my health back. And now there is 2 passageways we can go into, which utilize that same teleportation effect, but worse. Because they, for some reason, decided to put enemies directly behind the teleport moment. So they just appear in your face. It can be rather jarring when you see it like that. But it ultimately works the same way as the other one, except the other one had darkness obscuring your vision, and it just made it a lot more subtle. But it's fine. Over here is the Sapphire Planet, and we have all kills in this area. So with that, we have set out to do everything we wanted to do, and we can leave and go on to the second level, which is available. Now the second level is behind an elevator, and before I go there, I'm just gonna quickly check if I can open the box again, just in case. And this time we did get 4 items, including a Crater of Might, so definitely worthwhile. Plus we got some more Quartz Flasks here, which is always nice. But yeah, the next level is behind an elevator, and it stays lowered while you're in the other level. So hopefully I can run into the level, do the entire thing, and then run back onto the elevator once we leave the level. And then we won't have to wait for it to go back down again. So we're just going to try that. There's 1 Chaos Serpent in the way, but hopefully that's not going to pose any problems with our Quietus. I assume he's dead, not going to worry about it. And I'm just going to throw some hammers in this crate maze, which is always the most fun part of any game. There is a couple of hidden switches in this maze, and I will push them in a specific order. First, I'm gonna push the one that is hiding up here. It is usually guarded by a couple of Dark Bishops, but it lowers this box with a bunch of enemies behind it. There is several Dark Bishops on the side, and there is a bunch of Slaughtars in the middle. I'd like to deal with these Slaughtars first because they're rather tedious to hit, and the Dark Bishops don't really do that much usually. I'm going to push this, which is going to spawn a couple more Dark Bishops in the middle here, but it's also going to open up a door in a later area to get to that side path. And we do actually need to go there, so lower the crates once again. And now we are just going to try and make our way back to the start of the maze, provided we remember how. And that's always a big question mark for me, but it looks like we're going in the right direction. Push this switch now, which is going to open up another door. And this will take us to a cafeteria area, which was right next to the area we were just fighting in. Kill all the Dark Bishops. I might actually use Quietus here just for fun. It does deal with Dark Bishops rather easily, but again, due to the mana cost, I'd rather not use it on all of them. But provided you kill the ones that are close to you first, the rest of the fight is in a large open room, so no problems at all, provided that you make sure they're all dead. Otherwise you might take some accidental damage. Now over here we have a couple more of these doors. This one you cannot interact with right now. This one you can push, which eventually leads to a new banishment device. If you push it all the way forward, it eventually stops and the texture disappears. But we can open this one through the newly opened door here, which we opened by pressing the button in the room with the Slaughtars earlier. And probably still one more Dark Bishop here from the sound of things. I did hear an enemy at least, but I can't see it, so we'll see about that later. Pull this, and that should open up the other room here. If we walk forward, various things are going to start opening and closing, and lowering and raising and all such things, revealing another Sapphire Planet as it's called, but also reveals a couple more Dark Bishops. but they are coming from below, so they usually first end up shooting the floor a bunch before actually doing much of anything. If you strafe run over, you can grab the gem without going down. It's not too big of a pit, so you can take the fall damage, but I'd rather not. Otherwise, you just have to wait for the thing to go back up again and you can leave from that point on. I'm guessing that the Dark Bishop we're hearing is, yeah, it's one in the Crate Maze trying to shoot at us from a long distance. So let's just deal with that before moving onwards here. Various Ettins await us, but this will lead to another puzzle item, so let's open the door here. Couple of Dark Bishops to deal with, but again, with our hammer, no problem at all. And here is another weird looking wall which you can push on the side to slowly walk through it. Now there's a couple enemies here behind these bunkers, and unfortunately none of them are very capable of shooting through the bunkers, so we can deal with them rather easily. However, when we pick up this red gem, it is going to open up a few more things there. But we can once again press our number 0 twice that way and that way. And usually that deals with all of the enemies here. Plus, there's 2 more flechettes in each of these rooms, so we get all of them back immediately. Kill a couple more Dark Bishops on this side as well. And from then on, we can go onwards to the side we started off with. A door has opened here with a couple of Ettins behind it, and it also takes us back to the Crate Maze. So we might as well use that to go back here again. And onwards to the end of the Crate Maze. There is one more Dark Bishop waiting for us in a slightly hidden corridor. And from that point on, I think it's just having to deal with these. There's some mesh armor over there, which is going to raise our AC in a second, which is always nice. I'm just going to use 2 more quartz flasks since we're going to get a bunch back from that magic box anyway. Pull this to lower a staircase up ahead, and I might actually grab that green mana in a second because it is running rather low. And there is another Dark Bishop downstairs as well. Hopefully we can just throw a couple of flechettes and kill him that way, because why not? Grab this to replenish our green mana once again. And slowly go down the stairs, but not quite into the portal just yet. Instead, we're going to walk around to kill a couple more Dark Bishops from next to a wall, which is usually rather safe against Dark Bishops. And I'm trying to stay on top of this because there is a switch I'd like to pull. And there is also a large quantity of green mana still in this room, so we can replenish that in just a second. Pull this switch to open up one more door leading to one more puzzle item over here. And with that, I think we have done everything there is to do in this level. We have 82 out of 82 kills, and this level, strangely enough, doesn't actually have respawning enemies. And it's only this level and the final level in the game that have that for various reasons. But this one's rather unusual because there isn't really a reason that there's not respawning enemies here. But we do actually have all kills for a change. Now I'm going to run backwards the moment I walk through this portal, and hopefully the elevator goes back up. Otherwise we'd have to push a switch and have to wait for this slow elevator to go all the way back down again. So fortunately we didn't have to do that. Now with these 5 gems we can open up the next room, or rooms rather. We can just use our use button against this wall. And now if we run back to where we came from after killing a few respawned Ettins, it should open up 3 doors. And I'm just going to grab that. All of the dragon walls are slowly moving backwards. Each of them reveals a couple of Dark Bishops and a large amount of rather useful items like mana and discs of repulsion and other such things. Over here there is some health and some mana as well, and we'll be using a lot of that. There's some boots of speed there as well, but I'll grab that when I grab it. There will be a time where we'll have some time to grab things, fortunately, but first just deal with these enemies, and that leads us to the actual puzzle of this hub, which is 9 black squares and 3 portals. And each of these portals leads to an area that has a lot of closed doors that open up by pressing buttons in the other 2 portals. So works kind of similar to the previous hub, but without keys and with buttons this time around. First, I'm just going to go into the wolf hub. And it doesn't really matter which one you start with because of how it ultimately works. Kill a large quantity of slaughters here, and I do like dealing with this one first just because it has a rather large quantity of enemies to deal with from the get-go. And it's nice to just take care of the dangerous areas first. Over here, there's a bunch more centaurs down there. Usually they start converging near that corner, and you can just throw a large bunch of flechettes at them and hopefully deal plenty of damage to them that way. Otherwise, you can also just use the splash damage from the hammer, of course, and easily deal with all of them. Or a combination of the hammer and axe if you so desire. A couple more over here as well. And there is one door there which we can actually open up with the use key, so we'll do that in just a second. But first, just have to kill all of these slaughters that are waiting for us up here. But ultimately, not too big of a deal. There's a couple more enemies you can kill through the window here. There's an Etten over here, and there is also 2 Dark Bishops which are slightly next to the window, and they are trying to ambush us, so we can just attack them and then be on our way. When we walk through this door, we can kill a couple more Dark Bishops this way. Press a switch to open up a door leading inside the structure with a variety of serpents inside it. I'm just gonna grab some health here because why not? But our main goal is to just deal with a large amount of chaos serpents, which is gonna take a second to kill, but ultimately, provided we just throw hammers at them, not too terrifying. There is some mana here which we can grab to replenish our mana after this fight, but I would like to use our axe a little bit just in case, because once again our green mana is not doing too well due to the hammer just being rather amazing at dealing with most of the dangers in this hub. But the axe is also more than capable if you know how to move up close. But there is some combined mana here and there, so using both of those is rather nice. I'm gonna grab a quartz flask here as well because there's a lot of them in this level. And this door leads to some mana, I believe. And also a couple more centaurs to deal with. And over here we get some green mana back, so that is nice. There is also another door here, which is going, this one, which is going to open up after we press a button in one of the different areas. So we'll see that open later, but for now, we have to go through here, which is really the only place we can go right now. Kill a couple more Dark Bishops and press the first puzzle switch. And you can only reach one puzzle switch in each area before you open up the other ones. And it's always that one, that specific first one, that actually opens up the doors in the other areas. So you can now push a second switch in the other 2 areas, but that one won't actually open up the doors. But for now, let us go to the Griffin area, where you can hear a door open immediately, which is caused by us. We can use some discs of repulsion to get these chaos serpents to fight with each other, so they're not too big of a deal. Unfortunately, they do have a tendency to use ranged attacks against one another, so ultimately they're not going to deal any damage to each other, but they will be distracted by each other, so that is the main reason we're doing this. This is the door that has opened after we pushed that puzzle switch, and we can just throw some flechettes down the stairs here and hopefully deal a little bit of extra damage downstairs. We should be able to get some of those flechettes back as well. But it's nice to just get these chaos serpents out of the way so we don't need to deal with them later. We could solve 2 parts of the puzzle here, and I think I actually will. It does mean we have to go back here for the 3rd part, but that's just the way it is, unfortunately. We can do the same thing with the discs of repulsion on this side as well. Usually they'll start fighting each other. I think I only really got one of them to infight, but that's okay. But the first puzzle switch we can actually normally hit is the one behind this wall. It once again has that same symbol on it as the other openable walls in this hub. And that opens up some more doors in the other area. This one, however, also opens up a couple doors in this area. First of all, this one, which has a switch behind it, which allows us to fight the chaos serpents here and also get back some of our discs of repulsion. And similarly, over here, there is another such switch, which we can use on the chaos serpents over here. Get a chaos device, which might be useful later. And let us now first actually destroy these pots, because each of these large pots has an Afrit inside it. And we can just deal with those enemies right now. And the smaller pot has a combined mana power-up, so that is rather useful. Down here, there is some health vials waiting for us, but also a couple of afrits. And when we go all the way up the stairs, a whole bunch of dark bishops, which usually start infighting with the afrits in this room, simply because the afrits are blocking the way, and it's more or less inevitable that they start shooting at each other. Try not to jump down here because you will die. And I would like to have some green mana available before we go all the way forward, but there is some green mana there as well, so ultimately not too big of a problem. When you touch this pedestal, it counts as solving one part of the puzzle, so that's mainly the one thing we can do here. There is some stained glass there. It has mixed results in terms of when it decides to be destroyed. I think it's an angle thing. Sometimes being further away feels lucky, and occasionally I lose patience and just shoot it with the sword. It's very hit or miss. I'm honestly not sure why it doesn't work sometimes. Probably some weird hit detection thing. But ultimately we're mostly here for 2 kills and a secret wall that leads to another porculator. Ultimately, you can go without that, but it is nice to just get that out of the way. And you can definitely destroy it with hammers, it's just fiddly for some reason, and I'm not going to worry about it too much. Attack the various enemies that have now made themselves available here, and when we try and grab that shield, it is going to open up one more door with a Slothar behind it. The Slothars also have slightly more health than a regular centaur, so they can take a little more damage that way, but usually 2 or 3 hammers is enough, and you can get this quartz flask if you still need it. Now we still need to press one more switch in the 3rd area, so before we can do everything, we shall now go to the dragon area. And doing dragon last leads to some things, because once these doors open, which they do in a while, there's going to be some lit torches behind that door. Those torches are usually unlit until you've pressed the first of the puzzle switches in the other 2 areas. And once these torches are lit, it's going to take about 40 seconds, but after that 40 seconds it is going to spawn a crater of might in the middle of that circle of torches. So we should see that appear anytime soon. For now, we're just going to focus on the various enemies waiting for us here. It is a rather large amount and they can be rather fiddly to hit. However, due to us opening up everything in this hub, and there's the Crater of Might, it does make things a little bit easier in terms of angles. However, when we go up here, it is going to wake up a large quantity of afrits, which were waiting for us on the ceiling here. Which are not too scary, but it is a rather scary trap when you're trying to grab a rather low amount of health to heal up, so it can be rather dangerous. And there's a whole bunch of Slothars at the top trying to hit us with ranged attacks, and they can be a pain to hit. So I might just kill a couple on the side here, provided you hit the torch. Usually it'll go through, but occasionally they take a whole bunch of hammers to kill, and it can be a rather large waste of mana, plus sometimes they're just slightly too far up to deal with the auto-aim, so I'm just going to walk forward for now. Currently, the side areas are closed. This is going to open up eventually, but first, what we have to do is step onto that platform I just stepped on, the one in front of us, which is going to raise 2 platforms with dark bishops, one with a mystic urn on top of it as well, and the other one with a disc of repulsion. And when we step on the platform that is holding said mystic urn or discs of repulsion, it is going to open up the doors on the side as well. So if we do this, the doors are going to open, and there's a bunch of enemies here now. Now because we pressed the switches on the other 2 areas, there's also a bunch of afrits rather than just chaos serpents, and they have a tendency to infight with each other. So that's why I do prefer doing this one last, just because it makes this area a little bit safer, even though there is more enemies to deal with that way. But it is what it is. There is also a stalker boss in there, and I like to just deal with him before we move on. And now we have 2 sides where we have some areas to go into. These gates are usually closed until you press the puzzle switches, and then when they're open, it is a lot easier to hit these enemies. With the cleric, you can just use your Wraith Verge through a wall and they'll most likely just fly into them, but the fighter does not have that luxury, unfortunately. And there are 2 directions here which we can go. First, gonna go down the dragon elevator, which has a whole bunch of regular centaurs, so we can just use our axe on them and not have to worry about ranged attacks, but there is also a ranged version at the top here. And if we jump down from here after grabbing all the green mana in the world, it is going to open up a door with a couple of Dark Bishops, but also the second puzzle switch. And that's really the main thing we wanted to do on this side. However, there is some kills to get on the other side as well. So I will just go here, kill a couple more Dark Bishops waiting for us on this staircase, trying to hug the wall here specifically because there is also some enemies behind us up there. They do sometimes infight with each other, but more often than not, they're just gonna attack you instead, so be careful. And let's just try and kill that one right there. Also, this wall opens up behind you when you step onto this pedestal right here. Grab the green mana, lower the dragon face. The dragons are very much notable elevators in this particular hub as well, or they are shifting walls in some way. And this leads to a couple more mana power-ups and also a slightly easier way to deal with the enemies here if you prefer to use a melee attack. But with all that said, I am just going to kill this respawned Etten and go to the other side now, where there are two more areas. These spinning walls usually block the way until you press the other of the two puzzle switches that you need to press in the other areas. And they do actually deal damage to you if you walk in between them, so be careful of that. Let's first go to this side to deal with some of the remaining enemies. There are two elevators here, this misaligned texture and this wall right here. Both can lead to some Ettens. I'm gonna take this one because if there is still a Slothar alive here, I can use my axe to deal with it. And I wasn't sure if I had dealt with it yet, but fortunately, he was still alive and we could kill him that way. Now I can either use that elevator on the other side or just jump to deal with the remaining Etten and get some discs of repulsion here as well. On the other side, there is another elevator which looks like a regular wall but isn't. It's a somewhat misaligned texture again to indicate that you have to do something with it. And after killing that singular Etten, we can grab some flechettes if we so desired, but I'm going to open up this dragon wall. We can cause a little bit of infighting between the Slothar and the Etten right there, and that way we might actually push the Slothar off the edge that way, and that would be rather irritating to deal with. So let's just kill him like this. Push this switch, which is going to open up a door in the previous area over here. And a couple more Ettens and also a Dark Bishop to deal with on the end of this hallway. Surprisingly, they're starting to infight with each other. I thought I had actually attacked that Etten before the Dark Bishop did, but fair enough. Kill a couple more Dark Bishops and pull the third of the puzzle switches. And also get a large quantity of quartz flasks here as well. There's a couple Stalker bosses down there and a whole bunch of items. So let us now go to them. There is over here a small puddle, and when you attack the wall behind it, it is going to lower this like an elevator. We can go here and we can grab the various flechettes and quartz flasks that were waiting for us here. Eventually the water does go back up, but you can attack the water as well, which allows it to go back down and eventually go back up again to use as an elevator once more. And hopefully that's all kills and all puzzle switches. We do have 84 out of 84. So let's go back to the Griffin and see if we can deal with the remaining puzzle here, which has not opened because I am not done with the wolf area yet. No, I actually just forgot about a switch here. I just realized in the dragon area, because the first puzzle switch you can actually hit is right at the start around the wall there, and that's the one that actually opens up the door. It can happen to anyone. Don't worry about it. No one respawned, nothing happened, but that does show that it does indeed open up these gates. When we grab our chaos device, we can walk forward towards this arrow, mostly grabbing it in case I fall down, but there is a couple of Ettens here which can block your way and you'll end up falling down, and the chaos device can bring you back to the entrance to safety. Same goes on this side, and there's a teleporter here as well, but I'm actually gonna wait here for a second because, as you can see from those projectiles and the sounds in the background as well, there is a couple of Afrits waiting below us, and it's nice to just get these out of the way because otherwise they might actually kind of sneak up on you at a later point, and that can be rather a nuisance. Plus, They usually fly up rather quickly. There is a whole bunch of them, and they do sometimes have to go around the wall, so occasionally they can be a little bit irritating. And if they don't show up soon, I might just end up running to the puzzle and deal with them later, but hopefully that was all of them. This leads us to the Crusher Room, where there is a bunch of Ettins that are most likely going to get crushed to death. There are 4 switches which we have to push here that are hidden behind those same walls. I was starting to get crushed, so decided to use my Chaos device just in case. We did get one this hub, so I'm just going to count that as an allowed usage. And these walls guard the 4 buttons we need to press. And if we don't press these buttons, a crusher will show up at the very end and kill us more or less instantly. So be careful of that. Just gonna have to wait for some of these moving walls to work with us from time to time. But provided you look at where you have to go, you can usually make a path rather easily. This is not a wall. It's going to move in a second, I hope. It can take a while. It does feel a bit random from time to time, but ultimately, provided you make a path, you should be okay. And this wall would come down had we not pressed all those buttons. But we press the 3rd part of the puzzle in this area, and we are missing 1 kill. This could be an Afrit, it could also be a respawned Ettin. So I will just take a quick gander, see if we can find wherever... Nope, it's actually this particular serpent, because this door opens up at some point, and quite frankly, I forgot when. I think it's when you actually end up solving that puzzle or opening up that door. One or the other. Either way, that is all the kills here, and that brings us to the remaining wolf area. And this door just opened, which takes us inside once again. As I said, it opens up after pressing the other puzzle switches. And there's 2 ways we can go right now. First of all is this room, which has a lot of stained glass, and every time we get close to it, enemies break out of it. Which I think is actually a pretty cool effect that is heavily underused, but it does look rather cool in this particular hub. Kill a couple more enemies in this storeroom, which guards a large quantity of quartz flasks. 2 of them, in fact. Pretty large amount. And over these stained glass areas over here, we can also have a couple more Ettins join us in this great fight right here. The puzzle here is to jump on 2 platforms, the one on this side and the one on the other side. And when we do that, it's going to spawn a large quantity of Dark Bishops. And I like chaos, so let's just get that happening. This floor is also going to raise in a second. And hopefully we can get a little bit of infighting going with the various Dark Bishops and Slothars and such. I took a decent chunk of damage there. I'm kind of surprised I didn't die, but fair enough. I'm just going to use our sword for a bit, just for fun, before switching over to the hammer and dealing with the remaining enemies. I'm not too concerned about my health here, just because there is so many quartz flasks here, but that was arguably a little bit of a waste. It is a safer way to just kill all the enemies first and then jump on the platforms. But ultimately, games are about having fun. At least this one is, so I like to just do it my own way. There is also a Crater of Might at the edge here, and the rest of these are all just regular centaurs, so they're not doing too much. We can just deal with the remaining ones with the axe. And there is also large amounts of mana in this room, which we can use to replenish the rather large amount we use by using the sword. Now, as you might have noticed, using the sword against a guarding centaur, not a great idea. Those projectiles do deal a large amount of damage to you, so you do need to be somewhat careful. But, I mean, sometimes it can be fun. We can get a whole bunch more quartz flasks from behind these broken stained glass windows. So that's nice, and I think this Ettin is trying to hide from me. But we can now go to the last of the puzzle switches, which is hiding in this direction. There is a hole here. If you jump in it, you die, so try not to. Grab some of the green mana and move on through some rather narrow passageways with a bunch of Ettins inside it. This door has now opened as well from the outside, so you can enter from this side as well, which may make life a little bit easier. And the puzzle switch is in this direction, guarded by a couple of Dark Bishops in this room and in this room as well. Not too scary. As you can tell from the auto-aim, there's probably an enemy on this pillar as well, but didn't hit it, I don't think. Push this switch and then run back immediately because it's going to lower these two pillars with some enemies on them as well. But if we just hide behind them, they're not going to do too much, fortunately. You can also use some flechettes if you so desire, but I kind of want to save my flechettes for something later. It also lowered these pillars, as you can see, and one of them actually raises like an elevator to reveal one more icon of the defender, so that is going to be useful for sure, provided we're going to use it. Now there's a couple more rooms we need to kill enemies in. Surprised that this one is actually an ambush Dark Bishop and you can actually kill all of his friends around him without him really realizing, but fair enough. And there is one more interesting room coming up ahead, which I believe is this one. There is a bunch of Dark Bishops and a large amount of discs of repulsion. And when we step on these platforms, nothing happens because we are full of discs of repulsion, but when we pick them up, it's going to lower the pillars. And when we pick up 3 of them, it is going to end up spawning a whole bunch of Dark Bishops outside, and are once again very missable if you already had 25 discs of repulsion and decided not to pick these up. So easy to miss, ultimately doesn't make too big of a difference because we're the fighter and we can just axe everything. But if you're trying to go for all kills, then I would assume these count as well. We are missing 1 kill, and I'm hearing a Dark Bishop somewhere. He's over here. We are missing 2 kills. I guess some enemies might have respawned as well. And quite frequently enemies respawn in this tiny room right here. So let's just see if that's the case. Not this time. But we can just quickly run through this level to see if we can find the last of the presumably Ettins that's guarding something somewhere. And there he is. So with that taken care of, we now have all kills in this room, and we can leave back to where we came from, where all of these black squares light up. And now I'm gonna briefly mention GZDoom for a bit, because I'm using a program called GZDoom to run this game and also do some other stuff. And the other stuff is basically that it runs in widescreen and it runs at a higher frame rate than the original game, and it all just makes it look a little bit nicer. And it's called a source port, and there's a couple of these available. The kind of downside with GZDoom is that it's not as accurate when it comes to simulating the proper Hexen experience. And one thing I mentioned in the previous video is that if you use cheats in the secret level to kill all the enemies after the exit has been blocked, then the stairway will go down. And you can still press the button to basically do what you wanted to do in the secret level. And that's actually a thing that only happens in GZDoom. It doesn't actually happen in vanilla Hexen. So that's already a small difference. Another thing is the chaos device. In GZDoom, if I were to use it now, it would teleport me right here, because this is the last exit I took. However, if I were to use it in something like Chocolate Hexen, or just running it in DOSBox or something like that, which would run it more accurately, it would put me back at the start of the hub. And in this particular instance, that's kind of interesting. You can get around that in GZDoom by saving the game, loading the game, and then using the chaos device, which puts us back at the start of the hub. And right now, because we have solved the entire puzzle, a boss has spawned. However, it's not aware of us yet until we make a sound, and that sound also includes taking falling damage, which is why I'm doing this rather carefully. But provided we just slowly run in his direction, he's not going to wake up until we actually attack. And the nice thing about the fighter is that you can go over here, which is where you can kind of see the boss and his little cubes flying around. And we can just throw some flechettes in his direction before he has a chance to teleport away. Usually this doesn't wake him up, but this time it did. So much for that example. However, here is the Heresiarch, and he usually teleports away after walking around for a while. He has a couple of nasty things attached to him. He has a couple of cubes that can fly around him, and when those cubes are flying around him like they are right now, all projectiles will bounce off of him. And for the fighter, that is just very irritating, because there's just not that much we can do right now until those cubes disappear, and it just takes a minute before they disappear and we can start attacking him again. But we do need to be somewhat careful with Quietus here, that he doesn't end up just reflecting our projectiles back at us. But now that he is, we can just run back here, grab some mana, and do what we want to do. Also, these doors on the side open somewhere after pulling the switch to open one of the first doors in the level, but I kind of forgot to show that off. Don't worry about it. Just know that they open up through natural progression. Grab some extra mana so we can once again try to find the Heresiarch. And usually when he's nearly dead, when he dies, Screen Shake goes through the menu, but usually when he's nearly dead he starts spawning Dark Bishops, and there is one over there as well. He also drops his mana cubes and they end up exploding, so you have to be a little careful of that. And after a while the Screen Shake will stop, I promise you that. And we can continue to both the secret level and onwards to where we came from. Or to the exit of this hub, rather. And now, first of all, we can kill these enemies in these side rooms. You can kill these a lot earlier as well, but I'm just choosing to do it now because I just, quite frankly, forgot about it. But that's okay. And we can now also grab the flight power-up, which we can use to get some of our flechettes back in the areas which we saw previously with all the Chaos Serpents on the rather slow-moving elevators. But this is the exit to the hub. But we won't go through there just yet because we still have some things to do. Also, while I'm getting some flechettes, I'm just going to mention the other classes as well, because the Heresiarch fight as the fighter is probably the slowest one. The mage can also use the flechettes next to the boss while he's blocking with his cubes, and that doesn't actually go, like, it goes through the cubes that are reflecting in the attack. So you can still actually deal damage to the Heresiarch while he's reflecting damage to you. So that's actually really useful. The Cleric, on the other hand, can just place a whole bunch of flechettes next to him from the get-go and just attack him with the Firestorm attack, and he'll die in like 10 seconds. It's definitely the easiest fight to do. And this hub in general is just such a... The Cleric becomes so strong from this point on, especially just because he also gets so much more extra mana from the power-ups on this difficulty. So even the hardest difficulty part is no longer as hard. Now you can see these pillars going up and down. They'll go back down again in a minute. So while I wait for that, I'm just going to touch this one more time. There's another Crater of Might, which is wild. But also, while I'm waiting, one thing you also have to look out for with the mage is that if you use the Blood Scourge against the Heresiarch while he's reflecting the attacks, the homing part of that attack will also still apply to you. So the fireball can suddenly go towards you and kill you rather easily as well. Anyway, over here we have a small lit up area. If we walk into it and wait for a minute, it's going to lower. And it takes us to the secret level of this hub. And it has a couple interesting things. First of all, there is a bunch of Dark Bishops. There's a bunch of health power-ups to my left. However, there's a line def here which doesn't work very well. Because if we pick up the health now, one enemy wouldn't spawn. But if we raise this staircase, then go upstairs, this Etten spawns. And you can miss this one entirely if you accidentally pick up the health too quickly. Moving up ahead, this secret level becomes a bit easier with flight. You can more or less skip a whole bunch of stuff with flight, and since you can grab flight the moment that you have access to the secret level, it's more or less a given, but there is a path you can take if you do not have flight yet. And first of all, that requires you to go down here and kill everything. I suppose you don't particularly need to go and kill that centaur, but it's just a nice thing to get out of the way. And we can go up these stairs to press this switch, which then opens up this door and also this room. There's a couple of Dark Bishops behind it, but ultimately nothing too terrifying. There's an elevator here, which we can just fly up instead. And this also opens up a doorway in between the first button, which also houses one more Dark Bishop. But ultimately nothing else we can do right there. And we can now also go to the other side, where there's a couple more Dark Bishops waiting for us. And also another switch for us to press. And when we press that switch, it is going to open up the middle pillar with a button. And pressing that switch is going to open up the doorway back again. We can grab some more health, and it is also going to create a staircase right here. And there's a couple enemies waiting for us. There's another Dark Bishop right behind us, but also some Slothars that we need to deal with. Also some Afrits in the bottom of this pit. So we'll just deal with those as we can. And now we kind of have to get that helmet because there is a switch here, but it's currently blocked off. However, if we try to grab this helmet, it's going to create a staircase in this pit. But it's also going to open up this button right here. There we go. Which allows us to go to the second part of the secret level. But as you can see, without flight, you can then just use the staircase to get up that same area. And also go to the second part, the secret level, where there is a bunch of Slothars waiting for us. And I'm just going to take care of them a little bit slowly because they do deal large quantities of damage. And once you take care of the first one, you have plenty of time to dodge the attacks of the other ones. Now these things in the middle, they start spinning once you go through it. And that's rather dangerous. If you pull this switch, it's going to open up a variety of walls which house a bunch of centaurs. However, none of them wake up the moment you attack, so you can rather easily take care of these one at a time if you so desire. But we do need to go back to the other side of this room through the spinning death machine. We can't just go around it like this, but you can occasionally go through the middle as well. And as we kill all of these centaurs here, we can now go to the third part of the secret level. Now, unlike the other two secret levels, you don't actually need to do this one to open up the fourth secret level. This one's just a little bit of an extra. Now, coming up is this room. Currently our enemy count is 77, and if we walk forward, it's going to start spawning centaurs until one centaur actually goes to the middle of the room they spawn in. So if we do something like this, a whole bunch of them spawn, but none of them are moving, but all the teleporters are blocked, so it's stuck at 83 or 84. And if we attack once, suddenly the enemy count is 88. I've had it be 90 as well. There's not really a consistent amount of enemies you can get this way, but it can get rather dicey in terms of centaur numbers. But fortunately, because we're the fighter, we can just swing our axe around and nothing will really go wrong. But before you know it, all the enemies are going to be dead, and there are two teleporters on the sides of these rooms because this wall is closed, but we can open it through one of these two teleporters because there is a switch behind it that we can press. So first, dealing with the enemies here, go through the teleporter and kill this Dark Bishop. And I'm also going to kill the one on the other side because occasionally it will sit on top of the teleporter and block your way. It can be a little bit difficult to attack the one on the other side simply due to auto-aim not always working with you. But hopefully in a minute we can get a hammer flying that way, and we did in fact kill the enemy. You can kill a lot of the Dark Bishops this way, but let's just press this button and leave for now. This particular switch opens up a door slightly further up ahead, so we just need to go this side now. There is a bunch more Ettins waiting for us here, but again, we have an axe, so not really that big of a deal. And there is another teleporter here with another switch we can use to open up the door and actually get some goodies. This is the door that opened up after pressing the other switch, and it houses a Crater of Might, which is, I guess, ultimately the only reason to go to this particular secret level. There's also a cool fountain in the middle here, and every one of these pots also contains something or another. Usually it's green or blue mana or a 10 health pickup, so that is rather nice. We can get some of our mana back here as well. And before you know it, we are just about done here. We are missing one kill. Quite frequently enemies do have a tendency to respawn over here in the lava, or also up here in this room, and this time it was in this room. And with that done, we can now leave the secret level because we have all the kills, and we are also done with this hub, so we can actually leave this place entirely, unless something decided to respawn in the last second here, but it doesn't seem to be so. The mightiest weapons and artifacts of the ancients barely sufficed to defeat the Heresiarch and his minions. but now their foul remains lie strewn at your feet. Gathering the last of your strength, you prepare to enter the portal which leads from the Heresiarch's inner sanctum. Above you, the ramparts of an immense castle loom. Silent towers and bare walls surround a single spire of black stone, which squats in the center of a castle like a brooding giant. Fire and shadow twist behind gaping windows, dozens of baleful eyes glaring down upon you. Somewhere within, your enemies are waiting. And that is that. I think this hub is interesting, simply due to the fact that it does introduce a lot of interesting things. The Heresiarch is a boss we hadn't seen before, and is also slightly teased at the end of episode 3 of Heretic, so you might have already seen him in some way, shape, or form. It's unusual that they decided not to make the Heresiarch the final boss, but rather just a mid-boss somewhere in the game. But it is an interesting fight. It's unfortunate we're playing as the fighter, because you do have the least amount of tools available to actually damage the Heresiarch, but it is still an interesting fight, I'd say. You just need to be careful not to accidentally reflect a bunch of projectiles back at you. But provided you know how to do that, it's not too bad. They also have the build engine teleports, which I hadn't seen in a Doom game before, so it's kind of cool to see that. But I think that is that. So with that said, I hope you all enjoyed it. Next time we play, we'll be going through Hub 4, and I hope to see you all there. Bye bye.